Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by Allstate and the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust.
Good evening y bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices. I'm Alex Hernandez of Univision Chicago Primera Hora, which airs every weekday morning at 5 and 6. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, news of the Uvalde, Texas school shooting has America in mourning. We'll talk with the local mental health professionals for how to talk to kids in the wake of violent events. Also, turning pain into purpose, our series follows the stories of mothers who've lost children to gun violence. The Chicago Park District has a new CEO. Rosa Escareño tells us about creating safe spaces and opportunities for kids during the summer.
We really wanted this library to feel like home for the community.
And the mural that gives library patrons a warm welcome home in Little Village. First off tonight, the country is once again in mourning after yet another deadly school shooting. As details emerge about the shooting deaths of 19 children and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas, America's parents find themselves in a sadly familiar position, having to explain the events to their own children and helping them confront their fears about violence. Joining us now with more are Nestor Flores, Director of Behavioral Health Initiatives at Pilsen Wellness Center, and Nilsa Ruiz, Associate Director of Mental Health and Community Initiative at Gatz Hill Center. Thank you both for joining us today, and I want to start with you, Nilsa Ruiz. A lot of parents of small children might be wondering whether they should even address this with their children at all. Do young children typically have anxiety about being victims of violence? Is there an age where they're just too young to talk about violent events?
Thank you for having me here, and thank you for that question. There's never an age too young to talk about these kind of tragedies. Our brain are sometimes unable fully to process some of their experience and challenges, and children from the age 0 to 5, they express their fear by getting closer to their caregiver, either by crying or showing tantrums. And honestly, I expect adults and parents to really open and create that dialogue for their children to talk about how they're feeling their emotions, either through illustration, books, or just going over certain scenarios.
All right. And Nestor, older kids and teenagers get their information from all kinds of sources. How can adults talk about events like school shootings with teenagers in a way that respects their point of view, first of all, and addresses also their fears realistically?
I think the main thing is always to be honest and transparent with children, with teenagers. They're like sponges. They kind of feel your energy. They could tell when you're not being genuine. And so if as a parent, if you're afraid, then I would talk about my fear, like, I'm afraid too, but, and have that conversation. Talk about safety. Remind yourself and your family, your child, like, well, how do we make ourselves feel safe again? What do we do? Like, do we have dinner together, right? An activity, if do we go to church this Sunday? Whatever it takes to feel safe again. But mostly it's that honesty and that transparency.
Nilsa, what can adults do to help calm their children's fears about violence while being mindful of their own emotions?
Yeah, as a parent, you should first process the feeling yourself before talking to your child. Ask yourself how much your child knows and how much do you want to share. Processing the trauma of gun violence can feel really incredibly overwhelming, but find ways to cope and manage these emotions. Really instill self-care with yourself and your children. You got to remind yourself that your children look at you as role models. So if you can practice self-care to yourself, also do it for them.
All right, great point. Nestor, what would you say are signs adults should look for that teens are in danger of becoming violent themselves, and how should they respond to those signs?
Definitely don't look away from the signs. As I was reviewing this case, this thing that happened in Texas, there's definitely appears to have been signs. And so that's important. You don't want to normalize when someone's struggling. Signs are changes in behavior, they're isolating, they are a lot of self-harm. If you're self-harming, it could be a sign of, obviously, of some sort of struggle. It doesn't have to be that they're violent, but they're struggling. their mental health is, their emotional health. Things like hurting animals or hurting others or bullying. All those things can conspire to have someone's mental health deteriorate. And in this case, it saddens me a bit that, but it's also an opportunity to have this conversation. It saddens me that things were overlooked, that there were some signs that gave, especially adults that were around this person, an opportunity to intervene, to take action. And so, yeah, that's important.
Definitely. Nilsa, what are the signs that children might need more help for anxieties about violence?
Yeah, with children from 0 to 5, I would look for children who are either crying or showing more tantrums or even clinging to your parent or caregiver more. For teenagers, I would look for different affects. If you're seeing they're more frustrated or anger, or even isolation or feeling disassociated, or certain signs that you might want to either open a discussion or even just be aware of what's going on with them.
Yeah. Nestor, does living in communities with a lot of violence desensitize teens to events like school shootings?
100%. I think it definitely has an effect, and that's the issue here. As a society, how we normalize this, and then we have this reaction short term, but what are we doing long term? Something more like a sustainable action to point the obvious, that this is unhealthy behaviors, that it's systemic, that it's community wide. Right. Some communities really suffer this, and not looking the other way, not normalizing, and intervening. There's a lot of programs now. There's a lot of support for mental health, and it's just a matter of getting educated as to, if you do spot something, how to refer or steer someone in that direction of getting help.
And lastly, I want to ask this question for both of you. We're short on time, but both the victims and the shooter are mostly Latino. Does seeing children who look like them affect how they process events like this? Nilsa, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. Usually our perpetrators affects us, and definitely individuals who we feel familiar with. The goal is to remind our children to stay safe. The goal is to remind them all the different safety avenues, and also use some of that fear and anxiety into action. Talk to their local leaders, being able to talk to communities and connect with communities who are impacted by this daily, and find ways to volunteer, or ways to cope with some of these reactions to someone that looks familiar to them, how to bring that support back to the community.
It's definitely heartbreaking. Definitely heartbreaking, and it should spur us into action. Inaction is painful. Look at what we're witnessing, and so it should be, choose what discomfort you want to do. Have a conversation that's uncomfortable, but it's about mental health and awareness, or keep living these experiences. And the fact that they look like someone that could be part of my family is devastating.
Yeah, and it's things that, we see in Chicago pretty much every week, every day. We're talking about shootings, we're talking about violence, and we're talking about also teens and sometimes, sadly, kids being shot, unfortunately. I want to thank Nestor Flores and Nilsa Ruiz for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Up next, Paris Schutz speaks with the Chicago Park District's new CEO. Stay with us.
The new CEO and General Superintendent of the Chicago Park District is no stranger to city government. Rosa Escareño has postponed her retirement from a 30-year career with the city, most recently leading the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. Escareño is replacing Mike Kelly, who was fired from the role for mishandling complaints from girls and young women who say they were abused, harassed, and assaulted while working at Chicago's beaches and pools. Now, Escareño is tasked with restoring trust in the Park District, filling vacancies ahead of a busy summer season, and providing safe spaces for Chicago youth, as Mayor Lori Lightfoot seeks to move the weekend curfew. And joining us now is Rosa Escareño, Commissioner Escareño, or Superintendent Escareño, I should say. Welcome back to Chicago today. We mentioned You've had a long career with this city. Why come out of retirement to take this very big job?
Well, I've been a public servant all my career, and this is such a wonderful organization. When I was asked to come in and be helpful, I certainly, it was something that certainly touched my heart because I am a Parks kid, and so it's just in my blood, I think.
And you certainly have your work cut out for you, starting with public safety. On Monday, you were with the mayor when she announced the new curfew at 10 p.m. Do you believe that this is the right move to help public safety in the city?
I think the goal is to ensure that we're doing everything to keep our young people safe and engaged. And so I think that that's the priority. From the parks perspective, we are obviously in the businesses of recreation and making sure that we have strong recreation programs in every community, and youth are in our parks every single day. So we want to be part of the solution here.
And specifically with Millennium Park, the mayor saying that she doesn't want unaccompanied minors on weekend to evening hours. Is that the right move given what happened in Millennium Park?
Again, I think that the goal is really about safety and putting kids and families, their safety is the top priority for all of us. So I want to just make sure that kids know and young people that they are welcome through our entire city, throughout all of our parks and throughout the entire city. I think that, the concern here is about making sure that when kids are congregating in specific areas, and I think Millennium Park has been an area of attraction for our youth and also for other visitors and residents. So I think this is about safety and making sure we're doing everything to keep our youth and our families safe.
Tell us the programs that the parks do provide for youth, especially during evening hours or weekend hours when you see those violence rates tick up.
Well, again, I said we are the recreation department. It's always been said that the parks is the fun department, but we can literally have thousands of young people throughout our 250 park field houses throughout the year. And the summer is a very important time for us. And so we have all kinds of leagues happening, soccer leagues, baseball leagues, basketball leagues. We have a very, very strong gymnastics program. We have swim programs throughout the entire city all year long. As we go into the summer, we actually have very specific team programs that we are launching to ensure that our kids are engaged. But one of the most important parts of summer in the parks with youth is our employment program. We hire about 2,100 young people on all kinds of jobs to make sure that they are being engaged, that we're keeping them busy, but we're also preparing them for the future and for a successful future.
The park system so important to so many people that work there and that live in Chicago. As we mentioned, you take over at a very perilous time here. Your predecessor was let go after it was found that he had waited 6 months to act on these allegations of sexual abuse there. There are some former lifeguards that are now criminally charged with sexual abuse, many others that have been fired. Are you confident in the system put in place now that this won't happen again?
We have worked so closely on this matter. I spent the first 6 months and continue to work on making sure that we're building a park district that is built on trust and that we are being respectful and that safety is at the forefront of everything we do. I feel very, very comfortable and confident of the steps that we've taken to protect our workers, but also to protect the thousands of kids that are in our system. We've established the Office of Prevention and Accountability in terms of we've put legislation through the board. We will be uplifting that office this summer. We have done lots of training on everything from sexual misconduct training, from professionalism training, but we've put so many layers of training in place. And as we go into the summer, we're adding a layer of supervision throughout our beaches and throughout our aquatics program to ensure we're strengthening that. And I've worked, most importantly, I think it's so important to ensure that we're working very closely with the Office of the Inspector General. We've taken those investigations extremely seriously. Any indication or any outcomes from those investigations I am holding people accountable. Several individuals have been held accountable. And we must show accountability in order to gain the trust of the residents, but also our employees who rely on a strong workforce. They want to work in a place that respects them, and that is a top priority for me.
And you mentioned those investigations. Inspector General, the state's attorney was investigating. Do you anticipate more to come, more shoes to drop?
You know, again, I think my job is to ensure that we take every complaint and every claim seriously, and that we work very closely with the Office of the Inspector General and any investigative body, and that we take those issues very seriously, and that we immediately act on any allegations and of complaints. And so we want to make sure that the staff know that they are put on notice, but also that the public understands that we are not going to sit back. If I have established a very close working partnership with our Office of the Inspector General. And as soon as they are sending me information, we are having conversations and acting upon any information that I am receiving of claims that are found to be legitimate complaints.
All right, Chicago Park District CEO and Superintendent Rosa Escarreño, thank you for being back here and joining us.
Thank you.
And we're back with more right after this.
The new Chicago Tonight series, Turning Pain into Purpose, follows 3 grieving mothers whose children have been killed by gun violence. Reporter Joanna Hernandez met with them to learn about their lost loved ones and to hear about the work they're doing to bring awareness. Joanna Hernandez recently visited Chicago's Little Village community to hear from a mother who lost 2 sons in a single year. And Joanna joins us now to tell us more about especially the mother's work to seek answers. Joanna.
And Alex, the mother's name is Maria Trujillo, and despite the language barrier, she has made it her mission to obtain justice for her 2 sons by starting a campaign with other mothers. Take a look.
This is the first time in months that Maria Trujillo is scrolling through pictures of her 2 sons. She says it's been extremely painful to watch videos and hear their voices.
This is Felipe, who was killed in August, and this is Hector. Felipe was 28 and Hector was 30 years old. If I was to show you my photo album, you'll always see them right next to each other.
Trujillo lost 2 sons in a span of 4 months. In August 2021, Felipe Trujillo was sitting in his vehicle when he was gunned down in Little Village. According to Maria, he was waiting for his brother outside a store.
I screamed at him and said, "Son!" And my husband was yelling out, "Negro!" And he would go like this and move his eyes.
28-year-old Felipe Trujillo died at the hospital. Then 4 months later, in December, the family received another devastating phone call. Eldest son Hector was killed less than a mile from where Felipe was shot.
I'm devastated because Hector, he didn't have an upbringing where I could say he was always out. Hector was always about working. He started working at a young age.
Trujillo migrated to Chicago when she was 20 years old and later brought her sons Hector and Felipe from Mexico and settled in Pilsen. She says Hector was like a father figure to his siblings.
I would hear about the violence back then, but Felipe was 15 and Hector only 16. I wasn't as worried because I had the control to make sure they were home.
For the past 9 months, this mother has been fighting to get answers. Both of her sons' cases remain unsolved.
It seems there's enough evidence and we still haven't gotten a response to what's going on. The detective who was in charge of my son Felipe's case was reassigned to another case. I don't understand why he was reassigned when he hasn't solved my son's case. I don't understand the system, and sometimes I feel like we don't understand how the police department moves.
If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace.
She and other mothers have formed a campaign, Mothers and Families for Justice. They've gone as far as rallying outside the FBI headquarters, hoping to get assistance on their cases.
I feel like the system makes us murderers. They make us look like murderers because when we were with the detectives, they right away started to talk about gangs.
2021 is marked as one of the most violent years Chicago has ever had, with over 1,000 gun-related homicides. This year, the Cook County Medical Examiner has already confirmed 213 homicides, and the vast majority of these cases go unsolved.
It's always been the same when it comes to violence, but what happens is that people stay quiet. Bullets don't have names. I believe when people went out to kill back then, they had a bullet with a name. Now so many innocent people are dying.
Regardless of the language barrier, Trujillo hasn't stopped using her voice to support other families seeking leads.
People always tell me how strong I am, but I'm not strong. I'm in this fight because I want to feel. I want to know if I can still feel something. They say, I'm surprised you haven't gone crazy, but I always respond saying, how do you know I haven't?
As summer approaches, she worries about bullets taking over the streets and the lives that it may claim in neighborhoods like Little Village, questioning the police department's struggle to solve crime when it continues to grow.
This is the urn where I have Felipe. I can't let him go yet, but I know that the day will come when I have to let him rest, and I know here he's not resting, but I'm not ready yet.
Trujillo is one of hundreds of mothers surviving the pain of gun violence that's taking Black and brown lives, and many mothers like her are working through the pain to make sure they're not forgotten.
I'm going to keep fighting. As long as I can speak, I will keep talking about them, and they will be here with me.
Maria Trujillo's sons Hector and Felipe were both fathers to young children.
Joanna, this was just one of the stories featured in the Turning Pain into Purpose series. What stood out to you about these family stories?
Alex, one of the things that stood out to me the most is how courageous these mothers are. They turn into advocates, and despite all the pain that they're going through, they still manage to be there for other mothers. They all started support groups, again, to be there for these mothers who've lost children to gun violence, and that's essentially why I call this series Turning Pain into Purpose.
Thank you, Joanna. And you can watch the full Turning Pain into Purpose series by going to our website, WTTW.com/news. We're back with more right after this.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/daily briefing and sign up.
Chicago. One of them is at the corner of 23rd and Kedzie, where public art met the public library in the summer of 2020. That's where muralist Joseph Perez, also known as Centrock, and a group of young artists created a cheerful welcome for patrons of the Little Village branch of the Chicago Public Library.
My name is Joseph Perez, aka Centrock, lead muralist of the Mural home at the Little Village Library and instructor at Yola Cali.
My name is Elizabeth Cardona, and I'm one of the artists that worked on the Little Village Library.
And we really wanted this library to feel like home for the community of Little Village, but also North Lawndale. So that's kind of where we took the name from, and we also spelt it out in the design of the mural. When you're passing by, you're kind of across the street, you can see the wording home spelt out. But also if you're up close, each letter, each panel is a design in itself.
It was a great experience. I got to learn different things from each artist that was working on the mural. We were like 7 of us, the different experience working in a group versus working separately. Since it was a large mural, we also had to get on ladders and kind of be there for each other because it's kind of scary to get like all the way up in the ladder.
The style is a mixture of traditional muralist style, but also street art, so it's very, graphic design-ish, cartoonish too. But it's also very reflective. In those designs, it's very reflective of the community of Little Village and North Lawndale.
I grew up here, and seeing like artwork in a public library and being able to be part of that, I feel like that inspires other young artists to also take that career path, since they are able to see it in their community.
Yeah, I really want younger artists to feel empowered. Like someone like Elizabeth doesn't have to feel intimidated if they want to go paint a mural or if they want to go take their art and add it to the side of a building. I want them to feel empowered that they can do it as well and not feel intimidated or not feel like they don't have that sense of ownership of their own city.
This mural was completed through Yolocali Arts Reach, the youth initiative of the National Museum of Mexican Art. And congratulations are in order for Elizabeth Cardona. She graduated with a degree in art education from the University of Illinois Chicago last month. So congratulations to her. And that's our show for this weekend. Don't forget to tune in to Primera Hora on Univision Chicago every weekday morning. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, I'm Alex Hernandez. Thank you for sharing part of your holiday weekend with us. Stay safe. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.